Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled Parent Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. I kicked my Karen mother out of my house after she told me to control my wife's eating. After that, am I the jerk for being upset at my significant other for being friendly with my high school bully? And after that, hi from Texas. Private businesses can still require masks even without the mask mandate. Here's how that's going. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen gets kicked out. Why do you love threatening me so much? So please smash that like button. And if you're new, subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. I kicked my Karen mother out of my house after she told me to control my wife's eating. For starters, I'm 36, male, and an only child. My dad was a deadbeat, so my mom and I have always been extremely close. Apart from when I have girlfriends, my relationship with my mother is excellent. My mom is a very sweet person, but one of her bad habits is that she comments on people's weight. Not random strangers or anything, mind you, just people that she knows, like friends and family. Once lockdown hit, my wife, 32, female, got really into baking, and so both of us have put on some weight, but her admittedly more. I don't care, but she's really sensitive about it. There was only one time when I made a joke that was totally harmless, but it made her cry, so I never made any jokes like that again. Last night, my mom came by to give my son a violin lesson. She teaches violin professionally, and as she was giving instructions to my son, my wife walked by them eating a homemade cookie, and my mom said to my son, "Mommy should really cut back on the cookies. What do you think?" But because she said it in Russian, her home country, my wife didn't understand. My son shook his head no, and I sharply told my mother not to say things like that in my house. She seemed to understand and then finished the lesson. After she finished the lesson, my wife asked if she'd like to stay for dinner. My mother asked what she was making, and my wife said she had a meatball lasagna in the oven and some garlic bread, and then for dessert, there would be more cookies. My mom said to me in Russian that I shouldn't be letting her eat dessert before and after dinner, and this really upset me. So I told her if she can't respect my wife, she'd need to leave. She got very offended, saying this was no way to speak to my mother, and I told her that I'm married now and things are different. She refused to apologize or drop the subject, so I asked her to leave, which she did, but not quietly. My wife was extremely confused at first, but once I explained to her everything that was said, she got extremely upset. She agreed my mother's comments were out of line, but thinks I should have let her stay. So now I'm not so sure. Am I the jerk here? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk, or is his mother? Please let us know. Mother Dearest should consider minding her own business. Never be rude to someone who offers you cookies and lasagna. Am I the jerk for being upset at my significant other for being too friendly with my high school bully? Me, 26, male, and my girlfriend, 26, female, met in high school. We became really good friends. She was basically my only friend in school, and decided to go to the same university so we wouldn't drift apart. When we were in university, I finally asked her out. We started dating since. To sum up my time in high school, it was an awful time. I was very lonely, introverted, and quiet, both in high and middle schools, so I was prone to getting bullied. I was mostly heavily bullied by this guy, let's call him Lewis, and his group of friends. He would poke fun at my eye condition, intentionally embarrass and make me uncomfortable in front of everyone, call me all kinds of names, and just made my life in school heck. This was majorly traumatizing because school was supposed to be a safe place for me because I was being mistreated by my crappy family at home, but he ruined any chances of it being a safe place by making every day horrible. My girlfriend was aware of the bullying situation at the time, and when we became closer friends, she always comforted me about it and sympathized with me when I vented about it. She agreed that they were cruel for no reason and I didn't deserve it at all. Told me that she hated them for hurting me like that. Fast forward to now and what the problem actually is. We were out together walking the dog, and I told her I'd jog to a nearby store real quick, pick up some cigarettes, and come back while she stayed at the park. When I was walking back, I noticed her talking to someone from a distance. She seemed to be all cheerful and laughing. They talked for a bit, and he walked away in the opposite direction. So I came up to her and asked her what's up. She nonchalantly smiles and tells me it was Lewis from high school. My heart sank, not gonna lie. I awkwardly chuckled and said, "Whoa, you were seriously that happy to talk to that guy?" She says, "Sure." I told her, "You do remember he was the person that basically made my life a living heck in high school, right?" She told me, "Yeah, I remember, but but I'm sure he has changed and he seemed really sweet. Come on, don't be like that." I got pretty mad at that point and didn't say anything. She notices the awkward silence and says, "Aw, dude, come on. Do you seriously still have a grudge against him? I thought you would get over it by now." Holy cow, that really hurt. It's not that easy to get over years of trauma that sabotaged my self-esteem and confidence. It was so hurtful to hear that coming from her, especially because she was my rock during the times I was being mistreated by everyone at school and home. I don't still hate the guy and his friends after all the time that has passed or want them to suffer or whatever, but it's not easy at all to forget what they did to me. Sure, maybe they changed for the better, but seeing her talk to him so cheerfully and tell me about it made me really hurt inside. Am I the jerk for this? Update. I thought I should post a follow-up since tons of people saw the other post and are probably curious what happened. Basically, everything was kind of tense between us after we went home yesterday. When I woke up the next morning, my girlfriend told me we needed to talk, and I agreed. I was going to ask her first, but she beat me to it. She asked me if I was still upset about yesterday, so I told her that I was and explained that hearing that he's a sweet guy from her was really painful, especially when she knew about the stuff he did to me. I told her that being friendly like that towards people who tormented me wasn't something I accept, and obviously explained that her "get over it" comment was out of pocket and unnecessary. I told her how much him becoming a better person was kind of irrelevant to me because no matter how much he changed, the consequences of his actions will stick with me. She listened to me explaining, and she started crying in the middle of it and said she was incredibly sorry and that she didn't think too much of it at the moment and failed to consider my feelings. She said after I explained it from my point of view, she realized she was being the jerk, and it was a stupid assumption that the trauma would go away over time and I would forget about it. We understood where each of us was coming from, and I did forgive her. She was very genuine about it. I know she's not a malicious person and wouldn't want to intentionally hurt me, even if it did hurt. There was a bunch of people telling me to break up with her in the comments, and I see why to some other people this would look like a complete deal breaker. But in my opinion, relationships obviously come with their ups and downs, misunderstandings, conflicts like this one. So I want to forgive her for this and move on, especially when she realized what she did was wrong and apologized. If she hadn't, it would be a completely different thing. She told me she doesn't want to keep in contact with him after this and doesn't care about him at all. Even told me she wants to block him on the socials they exchanged, and I said that was up to her. So far, everything seems to be okay, and I feel like this helped our relationship in terms of setting boundaries and respecting them, and I'm glad we were able to talk it out. Hi from Texas. Private businesses can still require masks even without the state mandate. Here's how that's going. I'm a waitress. Our restaurant strictly requires masks while indoors if your meal/beverage hasn't been served and after it's been bussed. The mask mandate honestly wasn't that helpful in corralling unruly customers because they'd either argue that the mandate was not a law so they wouldn't follow it, was unconstitutional so they wouldn't follow it, or was irrelevant because they'd eventually be taking their mask off when their food was served, so they wouldn't follow it. But while the presence of a mandate didn't help much, the lack of a mandate has made things way worse. People who previously wore a mask now don't believe it's necessary for their health, or that we have a right to set mask wearing as a store policy. But what they don't understand is what I'll reiterate for you now. Private businesses can have any dress code they want. Ever go to a fancy restaurant that requires suit jackets for men? Or a grocery store that requires shoes? Yeah. Where were the freedom fighters then? Anyways, regardless of your opinion on masks, no need to argue it to me, in the comments or as a customer, because the owner makes those calls. My job is to enforce his decisions, whether that be all customers have to wear face masks covering mouth and nose, or if it were all customers have to wear sleeveless denim vests. I'd have to enforce it if he wanted it so. That's literally part of my job. Our in-house mask mandate at the restaurant remains firmly in place, and I spent my entire shift telling people to comply or leave, then telling them again, then a third time, then getting our larger, more physically intimidating line cook to tell them. By the end of the shift, I was a master at putting my hand up authoritatively and saying, "Sir/ma'am, it's your choice whether or not to wear a face covering, just as it is our choice to service you in this private business. So comply with our dress code or exit the premises." A few people called the police, or more likely acted as though they were, but at no point did any real authorities bother coming. After my shift ended, I was absolutely exhausted and ready to forget these people and just eat some banana oatmeal. I hit the supermarket on the way home, and the chain still requires masks. As I approached the door, most people were maskless, but stopped short of the entrance to put masks on when seeing the sign, no problem. The people directly next to me though, a mom with a classic Karen haircut and a teen son approximately 15, didn't. Mom actually did put a tattered, ill-fitting surgical mask on. She wasn't even wearing it correctly, but still, better than nothing. Her son though didn't break stride, just kept heading into the store. His mom flagged him down and said, "Jeremy, put a mask on, it's the policy," kind of quietly, as though she was trying not to anger him. He said, "I thought we didn't have to do that BS anymore. I saw it on the news." His mom explained that businesses could still require a mask even if the state no longer did. At first I was thinking, props to Karen, her haircut is totally misleading. But her son couldn't just let it end on a nice note. He whined that he didn't bring a mask and he didn't want to walk all the way back to the car to get one, and there wasn't Wi-Fi in the parking lot, so no way was he going to wait for her in the car. If he had a mask in the car, why would he have had to wait for her there? Mom tried to think of a rebuttal, eyeing the policy no exemptions sign, but seemed too tired to generate one, so she just braced herself and they headed into the store. A greeter stopped the son and said he needed a regulation face covering, but he ignored her, grunting, "Don't have one," and kept walking. The greeter called after him, but couldn't move from her spot by the door, and eventually he was too deep into the aisles to notice. I found all of this offensive. However, I was too exhausted from dealing with guys like him professionally to take it on personally. I just went about finding the right color of bananas and trying to get back to my car as quickly as I could. Fast forward to the deli counter. I had taken a ticket and was standing in line. Karen and her son were right nearby. Happily, several people were giving Karen's son the evil eye besides me and keeping a healthy distance from him, but he could not have cared less, and neither could his mom. She was placing a long, elaborate deli order, and he was picking up lemons in a nearby display and putting them back. Her son was having a loud FaceTime conversation with a friend, expelling his air and his noisy chatter onto shoppers in every which direction. But I tried to put it out of my mind because I just did not have the bandwidth to deal with people like this one more time tonight. That's when it happened. He coughed, maskless and directly on the lemons. I was getting ready to say something, but thankfully a deli worker noticed and called him out, saying, "Who's coughing?" Looking all around and noticing the kid, "Hey son, you've got to wear a mask to be in here." Karen Jr. shrugged his shoulders, but the deli guy wasn't having it, pulling out the corporate policy sheet. So Karen Jr. looked to his mom for support. She seemed genuinely embarrassed by her son, but not so much that she would hold him accountable for his dangerous choices. She hurriedly explained, "Oh, he has a mask, but he left it in the car and we're parked in the far lot." Deli counter guy was persistent though, saying, "I don't care where he left it. It's the policy. Mask up or head out." He took a few assertive steps in the kid's direction, which I guess was too much for Karen to handle because she threw herself in between her son and the worker. There was still easily 10 plus feet of space between them. He was hardly chesting up to the kid, as Karen triumphantly declared, "The store isn't allowed to have that policy anymore. Didn't you see Governor Abbott's announcement? It was never even a law anyways." That stymied the deli guy. My guess is because he had seen the announcement and he wasn't sure what to make of it. Didn't want to risk his job if he really couldn't enforce a mask policy anymore, and had a line piling up at his station, so couldn't argue with her all day. So he stepped back, but not before saying, "Well, either way, you shouldn't need a law. It's a paragon of selfishness what you're doing. Son, my mother is gone because of this disease. She's in the ground. Never got to meet her granddaughter. She wasn't too much older than your mother. You should think about that." The kid, unblinking, laughed at this guy. Not chuckled, full-blown belly laugh cackling. His mother pulled him away, saying he was being rude, but didn't make him apologize, let alone apologize herself. I placed my order, told the guy how despicable that exchange was, and apologized for his loss, and that was that. Or so I'd hoped. I prayed I'd be able to avoid them for the rest of my trip, but lo and behold, just as I was about to check out, I realized I was out of plastic wrap. I always have leftovers, so I needed to go for the wrap. Didn't matter how close to checkout I was. I doubled back, holding my breath, no pun intended, and sure enough, the mother-son super spreaders were stationed at the end cap, having an argument with a clerk. As best I could figure it from the bits and pieces I picked up, customers were complaining about his coughing enough to motivate a manager to confront the family. The manager was physically intimidating, so I guessed he was the staff's go-to guy for confrontations, but it became immediately apparent he did not have a personality for conflict. His name was Chad, name tag, and he was a human teddy bear at like 6'5" and 300 pounds. He had, to his credit, managed to get Karen's card away from her, holding it to the side so they could not continue shopping until her son put his mask on. But now Chad was pleading with Karen. "Please don't yell at me. I can't understand when you're yelling." Karen was going off on Chad about the laws he had broken, the discrimination he was enacting against her poor son, how the entire store had been harassing a kid since they entered, and how the news and the corporate office would hear about this and he'd be out of a job and no one is hiring right now, so he better be careful. Chad seemed genuinely surprised as he tried, and failed, to communicate to Karen gentle reassurance of, "I am trying to help you actually, ma'am. I don't want to harass anyone. I want to work this out. The situation at hand, though, is that you cannot continue to shop until your son conforms to our corporate masking policy for the well-being of the communities we serve. All right? Help me help you." Meanwhile, as Karen was preaching, screeching, the innocence of Karen Jr., her son, was actively berating her, telling her she was embarrassing and ineffective, and she was so stupid for wasting time arguing with these people, and he wanted to just ignore them and keep shopping. He was a toothpick, and Chad was a redwood, so I don't know in what universe he thought he'd ignore the situation and continue about his business, but oh well. Anyways, at this stage, I realized it was disrespectful to just be a voyeur to the spectacle. I would either have to speak up or move on with my shopping. Maybe this was the straw that broke my back after the day I'd had at work. Maybe I was just on autopilot, or maybe I felt sympathy for Chad. Probably a mix of all three, but my mask-enforcing persona roared to life. Luckily, I was also still wearing my work clothes, including name tag, or this might not have worked. I stormed over with my most authoritative manager of the manager swagger and said, excuse me, you're creating a disturbance. Do we have a problem here?" Poor Chad started trying to explain and remove me from the situation, thinking I was a concerned customer who was upset by the disruption of their altercation, or worse, a third member of the Karen party. But I just fell into my script, which I had down cold at that point, reciting, "Sir, ma'am, you have a choice as to whether or not you'd like to wear a mask. And as a private business, we have a choice as to the dress code we'd like to set for our customers. You have two options as to how we can proceed from here." Karen just kept talking over me, while her son yelled at her to stop engaging with us and to keep shopping, including this gem of a line. "They're literally lower than rent-a-cops. They're the can-stacking people. Just ignore them." So I went into the Phase 2 script. "All right, you have made the choice not to practice in our services, and we have, in turn, made the choice not to service you. Please leave now, or you will be escorted out. If you leave on your own volition, you will be welcomed back if dressed appropriately. If escorted out, a permanent ban will be issued. Please note we have a clear view of your face on our CCTV for reference, as you are not currently wearing a mask." That nearly made Karen Jr.'s head explode. He started shouting at us, and I just flatly stated, "My colleague is contacting security." Getting edgier as he escalated, because A, I made the assumption the store had security, but it was dawning on me that I had no clue whether or not they did, and B, Karen Jr. was physically larger than me, so I thought back to the stories of store workers being attacked, even hurt, for enforcing these policies. For a minute, I wondered if I should have kept my nose out of this business, but Karen stooped up to the plate. Better late than never. She started pulling her son towards the door, insisting, "I cannot be banned from here. This store is easily the closest to our house. Come on, come on." He resisted at first, even intentionally pushing over the end cap display in a rage, to which Chad offered the strong words of, "Hey now, was that really necessary?" When he started destroying property, Karen left him to face security on his own and made a beeline for the car. After about 15 seconds more of kicking stuff around, Karen Jr. realized he was left standing on his own 2 feet without mommy there to shield him from real-world consequences and absolutely broke down. A wave of terror washed over him, and just as quickly as he had flown into the initial rage, he bolted for the exit. Chad was so casual about all of this. He turned to me and asked, "You don't work here, do you? I've never seen you before." And I explained what I'd been dealing with at work and how I felt obligated to step in as a result, and he sincerely thanked me, even offered me coupons, but chillingly said that while he appreciated the thought behind it, next time I should not get involved. He warned that some of these people had been wholly unstable, hitting or spitting at employees, and they did have a usual security guard, but he was out that day because of an injury that one of these people had inflicted on him at another job site. It's only because he was out that they sent any regular store workers to confront the kid at all. He sighed and said, This is mostly what I've been doing today. I don't know if it's because I've got a calm demeanor or because I look like I don't have a calm demeanor, but either way, I'm always the one they send to deal with these crazies. I was so distracted by all of this, I didn't even end up remembering to get my plastic wrap. I just checked out and headed home as quickly as I could. So stay safe out there, everyone. Wear your masks, keep your distance, get the vaccine, watch out for one another. We'll be through to the other side of this soon. Not as soon as we could be, thanks to people like Karen and her son, but soon. What would you have done in this situation? Would you have said anything to Karen and her son or not? Please let us know. I would have whipped out the phone and recorded the conversation. You know that would go viral. The HR lady doesn't like me much. So this happened at the company that I currently work for, but it was many years ago. I did not plan the outcome, just a coincidence caused by insisting on malicious compliance. I work in IT, and when I started, my job was rather entry-level, but it was paid as a salary position. After some years, the company decided to make it an hourly position, which I did not like for a variety of reasons. The company's main hourly worker pool was for manufacturing and assembly line, so the company structured its hourly policies around that position. Rigid start and end times, scheduled breaks, and sick time billed to your earned PTO. A lot of these policies were not really compatible with my availability and the type of work that I was doing, not to mention some of the benefits changed considerably. Our employees were supposed to use a time clock, but those were only in buildings that had manufacturing. My manager at the time totally understood why I was disgruntled, and she came up with a few workarounds, one of which was to enter a generic 40-hour time card for me in the system every week, which was cool because it meant that I did not have to use the punch clock. If there was any overtime, she would go in and fix it later. There was nothing that I could do about the change to hourly, but being me, I was pretty vocal about it, and my attitude eventually caught the attention of the HR lady. She also got wind of the whole time card deal, so that came to an end. I gave in and started using the punch clock. No more edits. At some point, my manager needed me to start the day in a different building, which had no punch clock. I don't think she was aware that there was no punch clock, so she had to make an edit to my time card for that day. Well, the HR lady saw the edit and assumed that I was still being obstinate. Out of the blue, my manager scheduled a formal type meeting with me in one of the local conference rooms. She presents a document for me to read and sign, which is a formal reprimand for not following the policy regarding the time clocks. I was instantly furious because I was following the policy, but she sent me to a site without a punch clock. She had no choice as the HR lady was the one who wrote the reprimand and told my manager to have me sign it. I read through the write-up and realized it was very poorly written, like a grade schooler had prepared it. Lots of copy and pasted text, points that did not apply to the issue on hand, and no clearly defined problem with a desired resolution and probationary period. So I refused to sign. I pointed out the many mistakes, the points that did not apply, and lack of a resolution plan or time period. My manager agreed with me that the reprimand was BS, but the HR lady wanted to go down this path. I thought, well, then we were going to do it right, and I was going to make her work for it. I demanded a rewritten form with a clearly stated problem, a desired resolution, and a time frame for when the matter would be considered resolved. My manager said, the HR lady is not going to like that. She's going to want to talk to you directly. I said, good, I will gladly tell her to her face. We scheduled a meeting. I explained to the HR lady that the reprimand process was an opportunity to not only point out mistakes, but also to correct them. The lack of an improvement plan in this write-up meant it could not meet those requirements. Begrudgingly, the HR lady accepted my complaints and agreed to redo the write-up. To my surprise, I never heard from her again about the issue. I had kind of forgot about the whole thing until they did some restructuring in IT, which made me realize I didn't want that hanging over my head unresolved. I decided to formally request a copy of my file from the HR, and to my surprise, the reprimand was not in it. I emailed the HR lady asking about this, and she explained that she rescinded it, so it's gone. I was a little confused that she hadn't mentioned this in the months that had passed, but was glad it was over. Sometime later, I was having lunch with my director, and he brought up the reprimand. He was asking, whatever happened with that? And I told him HR rescinded it. Apparently, HR cannot close a reprimand without the employee's leadership signing off on it, which was about 4 different people. Not a single one would agree to it. It turns out that my malicious compliance with the reprimand process forced her to write a detailed, intelligible reprimand, including an improvement plan. All the extra details she had to add made it clear to everyone that it was BS and she couldn't add it to my file. Am I the jerk for not letting my neighbor's kids play in my lawn? I'm a man in my early 30s. I'm an MD, dermatologist, and just recently I decided to move out of my apartment to a place with more space, especially a lawn, so that my dogs, I have two, can have more space. I spend a lot of time in my clinic, private practice, and due to that, the two of them spend a lot of time alone. That being said, more space would definitely be advantageous for them. I searched for quite a while before I found a house that I liked. It had a big lawn, and ended up buying it. It's in a very tiny neighborhood in my city, and quite a calm one, which is always great. I've moved to this house about a week ago and haven't had any real troubles at all. Everyone seemed friendly enough. Last Friday, however, when I got home and went to the lawn to play with my dogs, a woman came to knock on my door. She's one of my neighbors and is part of their association. I'm not, and I have no plans of ever joining them, but they don't harm me, so it's fine. I went to answer the door and see what she needed. She was pretty nice at first, welcoming me to the neighborhood and all that. But afterwards, she said, and I quote, "So, I know you're new, but we would like to ask you to keep your dogs inside your house when you're out. The kids like to play in the house lawns, and they are afraid of your dogs. So, you need to put them inside when you're not at home." For a moment, I didn't quite believe what I heard and asked her to repeat, and she indulged me like this was a common occurrence. I just told her flat out, "No. The lawn is for my dogs. Your kids have no business going to my property, nor do you have any ground to make that demand." She did not take that well. She told me she was going to contact the association and all other kinds of stuff. I just told her flat out that she could call the Pope for all I cared. It was my property and my say in it stays. Oh boy, how wrong was I to say that? She left fuming and apparently throughout the weekend started to spread rumors about me to the neighbors. People who would smile at me or say good morning no longer even look at my face. Honestly, I'm more upset than anything else. But seeing this many people believing my actions were kind of a jerk move, it makes me wonder if I am in the wrong. I mean, they were just kids. I could have let them play on the lawn. Anyway, I decided to ask Reddit for help here. Am I the jerk? Should I have just let the kids do what they wanted? Edit. Just a note that I should have mentioned beforehand. My lawn/backyard is already fenced. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Karen? Please let us know. Nothing worse than having a Karen next door, am I right? Am I the jerk for telling my wife that my job is harder than hers? I'll try to keep this short. My wife and I have been together for 10 years. We both turned 30 last week, birthdays 3 days apart, and met in college just after we turned 20. We are child-free by choice. My wife is a social media/ad sales manager, and I am a computer scientist. I was promoted just before lockdown, and now I make about 3 times what she does. We both have bachelor's degrees from the same school. This is all relevant because once we began working from home, my wife saw that I do a lot less work than her. Essentially, I'm given projects and deadlines. If I finish a project prior to the deadline, I spend my extra time playing Xbox, taking the dogs to the park, and keeping the house tidy. Her job is different. She works 8 to 10 hours a day and is often roped into helping coworkers with projects when she isn't working. Edit. During my downtime between my projects, I do nearly all of the cooking, cleaning, and chores. I don't mind this as I like having something to do. My wife has expressed that she is grateful that I don't only play Xbox during this time. She's recently been frustrated, jealous in my opinion, that I work less hard, her words, than her, yet get paid much more than her. We're both 7 to 8 years into our career, and she feels I've come much further than her. I could see these conversations weren't going to end well, so I always tried changing the conversation. I'd say things like, our worth as people isn't measured by salary, or we just have different skill sets. I couldn't do what you do, which is true. I know nothing about marketing, ad sales, social media engagement, etc. Regardless, every time she sees me playing Xbox or something, she has to make a snide comment about how I don't deserve my salary, how she wishes she got paid to sit on her butt, etc. 2 days ago, I finally snapped and told her that while I may not work as many hours, my skill set is much more difficult than hers and far more desirable. I said that if she was unhappy with our combined household income, just over $200,000, that she could go back to school and get a computer science degree, and that I was absolutely sick of her trying to make me feel bad because she's unhappy with her career. Well, she's been ignoring me for 2 days, and her mom called me and told me off for belittling her. Of course, my wife didn't mention that she's been giving me crap for over 6 months now. I'm genuinely curious if I'm the jerk and should have kept my mouth shut, or if I was justified in finally giving her a piece of my mind. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Please come watch this video next, you will love it. And huge shout out to our newest official channel member, Katie Brown. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Join as a channel member today and we'll give you a special shout out in our next video. And to have us make any kind of video for you that you'd like us to, come on over to our Fiverr, link pinned in the comments below.